Join us for the Fanatical Prospecting Bootcamp that will help your team 5x their pipeline in 90 days or less. We'll be hosting it on March 10th and 11th in Atlanta, Georgia. Go to salesgravy.com/live. That's salesgravy.com/live and use the code podcast to save $100.
This is Jeb Blunt, and it's Money Monday on the Sales Gravy Podcast.
Say, make money, money, make money, money, money. Make money, money, make money, money, money. Money makes the world go round. I'm the talk around town. Remy gave me the sound. I need that Skrilla on the...
All right, it's Monday, another week in which to excel, to seize the opportunity to rise above adversity and write your own story. You are in the driver's seat, so make a commitment to start your week strong, because how you start your week is usually how you end your week. If you haven't grabbed our brand new free guide, 25 Ways to Ask for an Appointment on a Cold Call, you're going to want to download it today. You can get it at salesgravy.com/appointment. That's salesgravy.com/appointment. This guide has been crazy popular. It's been downloaded by more than 5,000 people so far, so you'll want to get your hands on it. Get 25 ways to ask for an appointment on a cold call, absolutely free, at salesgravy.com/appointment. One of the most vivid memories from my childhood was the day I was bucked off my pony. The pony's name was Macaroni, and I was 6. We were in an arena where my mother was giving me my very first riding lessons. Macaroni was stung by a bee, and she reacted by bucking. I couldn't hang on, and I landed hard on my back. It knocked the breath out of me. I gasped for air. And then, as I finally caught my breath, I started bawling as the shock of what had happened rolled over me. My mom caught the pony, led her back over to me, and gently told me to dust myself off and get back on. But by this time, I was sobbing the way kids do when they've cried so hard they can't stop. I shook my head and refused to get back on the pony. My mother tried her best to calm me down and reason with me, but I still refused to get back on. Then she took a different approach and got tough. Her stern, direct tone of voice made it clear that she was not asking me to get back on the pony, she was telling me. And that's what I remember the most, because my mom had never talked to me like that before and has rarely ever used that tone or directness since. "Get up and get back on the pony now," she admonished. She was unmovable, like Teflon. My tears and pleading made no difference. I knew I had no choice, so I stood up, shaking, still trying to catch my breath, and she helped me get back on the pony. And right there in that riding ring at 6 years old, I experienced one of the most pivotal lessons of my life. My mother taught me that failure is just a bruise, not a tattoo. She wasn't being cruel. She was being protective of my future self, the one who might otherwise have carried an irrational fear of horses or an ingrained habit of backing down at the first taste of adversity into the rest of my life. She knew that if she had let me off the hook and let me walk away from that pony, there was a good chance that I would never get back on again. Instead, that moment began my lifelong love affair with horses and many of my most memorable experiences. The truth is, failure is usually a short-lived event. Yes, it's jarring, unexpected, and can momentarily knock the breath out of you, but it doesn't have to be the defining chapter of your story. And that's what my mother understood so well in that riding arena. She insisted that I face my fear, effectively telling me, hey, the worst part is over. Now that you've experienced fear and failure, get back on and prove to yourself that you can handle it. Because once you push yourself through that initial sting, you discover that fear can't really bite you unless you give it teeth in your own mind. For far too many people, though, the pain of failure does become permanent. Instead of allowing themselves a moment to dust off and try again, they walk away in defeat, often without fully grasping the long-term impact of that decision. They replay the embarrassment and the pain over and over until it becomes an unspoken vow, never again. And in that single choice, a brief setback can morph into a defining moment in which they forfeit the chance to learn, grow, and eventually experience the sweetness of victory. Think about how this scenario plays out in everyday life. Maybe you dream of learning a new skill like painting, playing guitar, playing golf, writing a book, starting a podcast. But in your first attempt, you fail and you feel foolish. Rather than chalking it up to beginner's missteps, You decide, I'm terrible at this. I'll never try again. And that small bruise becomes a tattoo right there on the spot. You miss out on the personal growth, the fun, and potentially incredible experiences you would have discovered if you'd simply allowed yourself to fail and try again. In sales, this avoidance of failure is just as prevalent, if not more so, because the stakes often involve your income and your reputation at work. One day, you run a sales call that goes terribly off the rails. The prospect is disinterested, you get flustered, or you stumble on a key question. You come away feeling embarrassed, incompetent, and maybe even humiliated if it happened in front of your sales manager. That single negative experience can impact your perception of future calls. You avoid that type of call, that type of prospect, or that particular approach. You remember that unpleasant feeling so vividly that you decide it's safer to never try again. There's so many sales reps who will finally get the courage to call a C-level executive at a high-value prospect. But when they get a hard objection, they freeze, and it makes them feel small and insecure. And instead of analyzing what went wrong and adjusting their approach, they vow, I'm never calling anyone that high up a chain again. And while that might spare them from momentary embarrassment and discomfort, the long-term consequences are enormous. Their pipeline shrinks and their income tanks because they're playing it safe. And ultimately, their sales career crashes because they're afraid to push themselves outside of their comfort zone. Sales can be bruising. Each rejection takes a little piece out of you, and it can feel like a blow to your self-worth. And it's easy to internalize it, and over time, a string of no's can erode your confidence and make the idea of picking up the phone and making a cold call feel daunting. Our minds can also be drama queens. When something painful happens, we cling to that memory and we replay it, each time piling on new layers of negativity. I can't believe I said that. What was I thinking? I'm so stupid. But in reality, the prospect might barely remember it or might even respect your courage. But to you, it's all-consuming. But remember, a no in sales is rarely personal. Most often, it's circumstantial. Maybe the prospect's just having a bad day, or their budget cycle doesn't align with your offer, or they had a negative experience with a different vendor in the past, and they're bringing that baggage into their conversation with you. The more you're able to detach your self-worth from the outcome, the less likely it is that you're going to carry each no as a permanent marker of failure. Instead, you'll begin to shift your mindset and view failure as a data point that you can use to gain insight on how to improve. You'll treat each rejection as a chance to refine your approach. Before I wrap up with my final thoughts on fear and failure, I want to say a big thank you to Dan Tracek for this awesome 5-star review that he wrote on Apple. He said, Jeb provides real-life strategies and applications that yield positive results. He doesn't sugarcoat anything and maintains an approach that is full of common sense. He leaves excuses at the door and preaches that sales is a game of constant grinding. And if you're willing to grind day in and day out, the positive results will come. I love this review, Dan. Thank you so much. You are awesome. And a massive hug and thank you to all of our listeners who took a moment last week to give us a 5-star rating or review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, and wherever you were listening to your podcast. Your reviews and ratings make a massive difference because it pushes us up in the podcast algorithms so that other people can find us. You are an amazing audience, and I'm going to tell you something. We are so grateful for you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, please take a moment and click the share button on your favorite podcast app or share this to your social media feed. The true success stories in sales almost always come from people who learn to pick themselves up, analyze failure, and adapt. They didn't let the fear of failure overshadow their potential for greatness. The best salespeople, and frankly, the happiest people, know that failure is inevitable. So rather than avoiding it, they embrace it. They feel the pain just like everyone else, but recognize that bruises eventually fade. You just have to keep moving forward in order for them to heal. At the end of the day, resilience in the face of failure is a choice. Now, I know it doesn't always feel that way, especially in the raw moments right after you've messed up or you're laying on your back in the sand with your breath knocked out. But as soon as you reclaim the power to stand up, brush off the dust, and climb back on, whether it's a literal or figurative pony, you'll find your perspective shifting. Failure no longer holds you hostage. It becomes a footnote in a broader story of your determination and personal growth. So the next time you bomb a sales presentation, lose a deal you thought was a lock, get yelled at on a cold call, or face an embarrassing situation in front of your peers or boss, remember that you get to choose. It can either be a bruise that will soon go away or something that you sear into your psyche and turn into a tattoo of permanent self-doubt. So my challenge to you this week is to make the choice to look up and get up, to get back on the phone, to set another meeting, to propose the next big idea, to trust yourself, to learn, adapt, and keep going. And when you're tired and when you're worn out, when you think you can't take any more rejection, to will yourself to stop and make one more call. Because failure is only final if you decide to never get back on that pony again. I'll see you next time on the Sales Gravy Podcast.
Survival of the fittest, you can sink or swim. I've been broke, I ain't never going back again. I need some C-notes, some cheddar, and a stack of ends. I need a bowl of dough, I don't need no Facebook friends. I need a pack of them snaps, a handful of Fetty Wops, and rubber band on my greenbacks. Look, dawg, don't be playing with my paper. I need every red cent, that's why I brought my little scraper.